Alright, we open the scene tonight to a gloomy and misty night. On a London street, the fog is still thick and rolling as we see two men walking up toward a large manor house not far away. We see Cormac and Robert. And they're about to turn the corner up the path towards the manor gates when they see shapes emerging through the fog ahead of them. A man and a woman approaching the same path from the other way. Thomas and Elenid. Between the latter hunting and the former engaging in Elysium affairs, the group of you have returned to the same manor around the same time. And as the fog clears and you all recognize each other, Elenid and Thomas join the scene, and you are brought close enough to speak. The scene is yours.
Elenid approaches them and says, well, I certainly hope your efforts were more fruitful than ours. She was not where we checked.
Indeed, we've found our wayward lamb.
And what has become of her?
Robert looks towards Cormac.
Cormac scowls, visibly. She's gotten herself into the claws of Bella Matea, is what's happened.
Thomas frowns, but doesn't say anything.
Quite. They were swarming around their new prey.
That is unfortunate. Did what we said to her really not sink in that badly?
It seems so. But who knows?
I did give her the correct impression of exactly how I feel about her change of allegiance. Hopefully she comes around. But if not, she's lost to us.
Yes, well, unfortunately, if the transaction is already complete, there's probably little we can do about it.
Fool girl's already taken a boon.
At least she'll be fed for a year.
On prostitutes?
It's better than starving.
I would debate you there.
It's not how I would have had her end up, but I can see the appeal of independence.
Speaking of independence, I have some plans of my own. I wish to make a journey to Lincolnshire.
As do I.
So soon.
I would have words with my sire, Hugh de Balsham. His wisdom could be useful in our investigation.
I would choose to speak with the other witness.
Yes. How long to arrange travel there?
If we travel only by night, it's quite a journey. 2 days at least. We'll need to make sure we're well provisioned. Is your business complete in London, Thomas?
Not until Amelia has been presented. She yet has my name tied to her. If she would choose independence, I would see her wish granted. However, if you'll humor me, this indulgence, I will arrange a vessel to take us up to Boston. The ride from there to Lincoln would be a good deal shorter.
if I call for my ghoul, she can, well, if any of you have a light-proof carriage, she can drive that through the day. She has done that for me before. If not, I can attempt to retrieve my previous light-proof carriage.
Whatever you plan to do, make it quick. We've already wasted enough time here.
I have no resources here, so I would just be along for the ride.
Why don't you allow Bella to present your wayward progeny?
Thomas cocks an eye at that.
Because y'all's already accepted responsibility for her.
In Elysium. It does present an opportunity at the very least.
She's not your blood. What care you for her?
It's an excellent question I don't have a good answer for. Something to do with casting off the young to the wolves of the old.
It does pull on the heartstrings.
My heartstrings are long decayed. Although his face would say otherwise, he looks rather put out.
I would speak to both Bella and Amelia.
Now's your chance. They're at Elysium. Have fun.
You needn't join me if you don't want to.
Good. I won't.
He's not waiting.
Well, if I'm going to call for my, ghoul, I better do that sooner rather than later.
We still need to find Cassandra. Perhaps Elysium is the best place to start.
Perhaps.
And I trust you'll be waiting here then, Cormac.
I have some things to think on, yes.
Very well. I'm sure we'll all meet here again when business is concluded for the night.
Don't hurry on my account.
Robert just shrugs and begins heading towards Elysium.
Alright, Robert heading to Elysium, and where is everyone else heading? Start with Elenid. Where are you going?
Elenid is heading in to, edit that letter she wrote earlier to ask for her ghoul to join her. And promptly see that sent.
To have her sent to join you in London, or where?
If we're going to be taking a long journey, it's probably best that we have someone to take us to travel during the day, and she has served me well doing that before.
Alright. So you head off back to the manor to work on your letter.
To amend my letter, yes, since I realized that I was mentioned writing it, but I never mentioned sending it.
Fair enough. Alright, so Robert to Elysium, you to the manor. Cormac, where are you going?
Cormac is actually going to walk the streets for a while. It's been a long time since he's been to London. He wants to see the changes they've made.
Alright. Sorry, go ahead.
and see how it feels to be a predator on these hoary streets. Someone with a little time under his belt.
All right. So you head into the streets of London, still thick with fog here and there. And Thomas.
Also heading for Elysium.
Okay. So Thomas and Robert to Elysium. We will start with... We'll follow Cormac, actually, as you enter the streets away from the gauntlet, the rest of the gauntlet. You find that even as the hour grows late, the city continues to be busy later and later. It's been 70 years since the Peasant Rebellion that you were part of the rabble-rousing of, but even in that short amount of time, you've seen tremendous change in the volume and density of the city. It expands far beyond the walls, and even as you walk the streets within, you have to step aside for people getting out of the way of them. And it's a very busy and perhaps colder city than you recall. Do you mean to hunt, or do you just mean to stalk the streets for now?
He's going to stalk the streets for now, perhaps visit some of his old haunts from the Peasant Rebellion days. See what's become of them, what stands there now.
Absolutely. So you're walking, and as you turn a corner, you find yourself bumping into someone who yells out in surprise. Oh my! Get away from me! Get away! Wait. I've seen you. You're that one that caused all the ruckus decades ago. You see, as you get your own bearings, it's a young woman in a long, simple green kirtle, long, light brown hair dangling down behind her. And you recognize this person as she seems to recognize you. Simone Deschamps, a very paranoid and flighty creature, easily spooked, sometimes speaking in enigmas and riddles, and now apparently prone to wandering. You recall that during your time around the Peasant Rebellion, she was present in Elysium, but seemed not to take any side for or against you. And she seems to have dropped a few things, a basket of bread and some other things. She's kind of sitting there crouched, looking up to you as she gathers her stuff.
Simone, is it? It's been some time since I've seen you. And he'll help her pick up her stuff if she'll let him.
She seems to keep her distance, but she seems to allow you for now. And she collects some of her bread, which has gotten a little bit dirty, and some fruit which has gotten dirty, but she puts it back in the basket anyway. And starts to stand back up to face you, although she's not quite as tall as you. Yes, you're of the gauntlet now. That is indeed a strange twist, is it not? But what are you doing following me? Shouldn't you be shaking down some prince somewhere?
I will be soon enough, and he'll give her a smile. For now, I was just taking a look around the city. A lot has changed. Have you?
Why do you want to know if I've changed? And she kind of angles herself away from you, looking at you sidelong, looking you up and down very suspiciously.
Simone, dear Simone, you've always been one of my favorites. Your quiet beauty, your strange grace.
Roll your charisma empathy, standard difficulty.
Standard, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear. She narrows her eyes at you, and her eyebrows sharpen. I think perhaps you pay too much attention to me, Cormac de Courcy, gauntlet or not. I do not appreciate the attention you've been giving me. Here and there I see you, looking at me. Just now, and she points at you.
Just wondering what you're thinking, Simone. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous, you know. And I am, after all, interested in the local nightlife.
Yes, I bet you are. She nods. She folds her arms together, still angled away from you. I can't say how different this city is. I travel here and there, you know.
Bearing food, no less. For whom, may I ask?
This is just a prop, so I'll be less accosted. The city has gotten more dangerous, perhaps, than you recall. Ever since that mess in the 40s, I believe it was. Yes, there have been a number of close calls in this city. Hunters, priests. It's died down some, but watch your step.
I always do, lest I step in a pile of shite.
Surely one of the esteemed gauntlet isn't just here just to follow me. Unless you are. What else are you doing here?
I have no reason to persecute you, Simone. We're here on an official investigation. I can't reveal much of the details, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sure you cannot. So suspicious.
I'm the suspicious one.
Are you calling me suspicious?
Shall I give you reason to be? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
She just seems to be struck silent. She doesn't really know how to reply to that.
Best to scurry on now, little dove, before I do find a reason. My patience with you has grown thin already.
Her eyes are watching you, and they suddenly go wide as you think they can. And with speed you didn't expect this young woman to have. She rushes forward to grasp your shoulders and speaks to you very close to your face, and you realize she's speaking to you in Irish Gaelic. Your path has crossed one of the last of them, and it may yet again. There's ever darkness they do not comprehend. Tread carefully, lest you hang from the flesh trees with your brother. Then she shakes it off and lets go of you, her head lowered, her hands in her hair as she reorients herself.
It's Cormac's turn to narrow his eyes. What do you know of these things?
And she looks up suddenly. What things?
What you just said to me just now, about an ancient evil.
What are you talking
How do you
about?
know?
Look, it was pleasant enough seeing you again, but please stop following me. And she looks very irritated all of a sudden and moves to try and pass you.
Don't worry, I will. And he'll step aside.
And she continues on in a huff, looking back to you with a frustrated look.
He does keep his eyes on her until she's out of sight. Perhaps just to fuel her paranoia.
It seems to work. She speeds up.
And then he chuckles to himself. Always been a strange one, that one. But how does she know? Thinking on that, he continues his stroll.
Alright. Do you mean to continue to stalk the streets for now?
For now, yes.
Okay.
Blow off some steam.
taking her words with you, going to blow off some steam. We fade from this scene, and we'll follow Elenid briefly as she returns to the manor to amend her letter. That's an easy enough task to do. You're led back in the manor quickly enough when the staff recognize you and brought back to your room with your stationary supplies, and soon enough have your letter crafted. It's handed off now if you want, although it might be some time before it reaches Bristol. What else do you mean to do tonight after finishing your letter?
Could I perhaps pay the couriers an extra fee in order to have them deliver it quicker?
Absolutely. Let me see. I'm just looking at your sheet. Roll your resources, standard difficulty. You're a little light on coin at this moment, at least not enough to convince these riders to go out into the night and start going, station to station. Not quite enough to increase the speed significantly, although they're willing to start riding out the next morning.
Alright. How many days do they say it will take?
Good question. Let me assess my map. We're going from London to Bristol. It's about 115 miles. And with horseback, with no extra horse, it's about 25 miles a day. So I'm going to say 5 days from now they'll receive the letter you sent. And then another 5 days. Well, probably a little bit longer. If she's bringing a carriage, it could be a little bit longer than that to bring it back to London, because she won't be riding at horseback speed, she'll be riding at carriage speed.
Well, if it's 5 days, then she's probably not going to... Well, the carriage would be useful, but...
So you're probably...
Oh well, the letter's already written.
Okay. Yeah, you're
But,
probably looking at like 12-day turnaround to get it. If you send it now, she'll probably be here in like 12 days.
Yeah, her main goal is to get her to her before the month is up, so her ghoul does not run out of blood.
Well, you would know that the way you've been pretty conservative with her, so assuming she hasn't been extremely strenuous with what you've given her, she could probably last a couple months before you really have to worry about that.
Alright. But still, having a light-proof carriage is useful.
Okay, so you send the letter off?
Yes.
Alright. Yeah, they take it from you and agree to ride off at dawn. And they tell you about that long to expect. From here to Bristol, probably 5 days, assuming good weather and nothing terrible happens.
Right.
So you still have the better part of an evening. What else do you need to do?
I do not know this city. If I wander around aimlessly, I'm going to get hopelessly lost. As such, she will likely go to Elysium to see if she can meet up with the other two.
Okay. So you'll be following after Robert and Thomas, probably 30, 40 minutes behind them. Maybe less. So we will follow after them as this scene fades. And we go back to Elysium. Alright, Thomas and Robert, you re-enter Elysium after, I would say, about 45 minutes, so I can exactly map this out to a T. But soon enough, you're passing through the screen into the ballroom of Elysium, and Thomas, you see the same sight that Robert did. It appears that Bella Matea and Helen are sitting with Amelia, kind of closing in, so Bella on one side and Helen on the other, and they seem to also be speaking with one of these men that Genevieve spoke to you about, Cesar de Leon. And that seems to catch your eye. There are others, of course, in Elysium, but no one of great significance yet.
Thomas doesn't stand on ceremony, but he does approach at a relatively measured pace. He manages a smile to be as disarming as he possibly can be, given the circumstances.
Sure, I will take a... manipulation etiquette. Difficulty 6. Yeah, you're well controlled in how you present yourself, despite perhaps having some strong feelings on what you're seeing. Your pace is measured as you wish, and you present yourself fairly well. And what's Robert doing as you see Thomas is entering Elysium and not exactly beelining, but certainly making good progress towards Bella and co.
Robert's looking around, frowning that these are the only 3 noticeable characters, but he'll follow not far behind at a leisurely pace.
Right. Thomas, you arrive and the group sees you're approaching, and immediately there's a radiation of sobriety that kind of passes over the whole group as they see you approach. And Cesar de Leon certainly seems to fix you with a more serious gaze. But Bella is the first to speak up. You see Amelia looks somewhat concerned. Thomas, Are you also here to berate us?
Of course not.
Well then come, sit. Enjoy the company as your companion would not.
Thomas raises a hand to still the offer. I merely wished to come to an agreement. Amelia is an unpresented neonate. Your choice to take her boon leads one to certain presumptions.
And what presumptions would that be, Thomas Chamberlain?
His smile broadens a little bit. It would be easy for someone looking in from the outside to assume that you had taken responsibility for this young lady until she is formally presented before Prince Ambrose. Is that what you mean to do?
She smirks at that after a moment. No more than perhaps your brother would claim you.
Caleb and I have a perfectly fine arrangement.
So I've heard.
That being the case, if you will not speak for her until her presentation, as the person who has spoken for her, I do have a small request.
Please.
Oh, not of you. And he directs his attention to Amelia.
And she
Until
blinks
you-
a few times.
Until you have been presented before Ambrose, I would have you haven with me. I will not be so presumptuous as to take the place of your sire, but I also will not risk my good name on the decision-making of the neonate.
She nods a few times. I can do that, I suppose. Must we go
Must we
now?
No, but until such time as you have been presented, I do request that you at least notify my house servants of where you will be going and with whom you will be associating. I will not judge you for your choices. I simply wish to know what they are.
The only people I know in this city are yourself and the others on that ship and Bella here.
And he smiles again at Bella. I'm sure that Mademoiselle Matea will see that that is resolved presently.
She has a faint smile of amusement. Bella does.
Don't misunderstand. He's speaking to Amelia out of the one side of his mouth while looking at Bella. I certainly can see the appeal of the offer. It's possible even Bella thinks that she's being selfish. Or selfless, sorry.
Not everything is so black and white, my dear. I would have thought that with the years you've held, you might appreciate something like this.
In my years, I have learned one thing above all others. Everything has a price, and no one is clear about their motives up front.
Yes, well, this is all very tense, isn't it? And Helen kind of speaks up from the side, looking over to Robert. Perhaps you will join us. And give us some more pleasant company, eh?
But of course.
Ah, I like him. Come. And she pats the padded cloth of the sofa next to her. Cesar was just speaking to us of goings-on on the continent and of this Camarilla. It's all very exciting.
Indeed. I shall have to hear of this. And Robert takes a seat.
Thomas remains standing, but he does shift his position just a bit so that he can look at Cesar.
And he seems to be appraising you very carefully as well. Everyone's eyes seem to be on you, but no one seems to be speaking immediately.
I understand that this Camarilla organization has a good deal of influence already within the Isles.
Is that so? Now, where have you heard that?
Here and there.
Well, then it is lost on me. So far as I know, I was one of Lord Harderstadt's first emissaries to the British Isles. Do you mean to stand there and stare at me, or will you be joining us?
Where are the open seats nearby?
There are some chairs adjacent to the couch, which holds Robert, Helen, Amelia, and Bella. And it's kind of around this table. So there's that sofa. To the sofa's left is this chair where Cesar is. And then opposite him, there's another empty chair. And then you're kind of standing across from the couch.
Thomas will, the chairs are just regular four-legged wood back guys.
No, they're a bit more comfortable and plush than that. There is some, You think maybe feather padding on the backs and on the seats.
Do they have arms or no?
They do.
Bugger.
What does Thomas do?
Is there a chair nearby that doesn't have arms? Something small and light that he can move easily.
There is. I think something like 15 to 20 feet away, there's another table nearby that has a few, you think maybe ghouls or neonates sitting down at it, and there are a couple more simple chairs that they're not using. You would just have to pick it up and move it over.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and do that, actually. Very, very aware of how it's going to work.
Yeah, you definitely catch some stares when you go to this one table and take their chair and move it back.
Set it down and sit in it front to back. With the back of the chair between him and Cesar specifically, but the group as a whole as well.
Robert can't help but smile at seeing this.
How are you sitting down? Maybe I'm not picturing this.
Okay, turn the chair around backwards. Sit in
Okay.
it facing the back.
Like those 90s commercials where somebody sits down on the chair backwards and to be relatable to kids.
Well, no, more like that habit that sailors have when they meet someone they don't trust and they put the back of the chair between them and the person who may or may not be holding a knife they want to jam into their chest. But yes, your analogy works too.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get the positioning. So you're basically like straddling this, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's a very specific picture. And it draws a lot of stares now. Cesar actually looks between you and the group on the couch and then back to you. Is there something wrong with the chair now?
Old habits die hard.
Very well. As I was saying. And then he turns back to the group sitting on the couch, and he'll begin telling, you can tell it's kind of mid-story about the battles he's supposedly been in with some of these anarchs on the mainland, and he goes about telling some of the basis of the Camarilla to the group of you. And so that's going to take some time as that scene becomes something of a montage. And so you listen for a while. And we'll fade from this scene as you listen to Cesar speak of the Camarilla and of problems abroad. Elsewhere, Cormac, you're still wandering the streets. You've not accidentally bumped into any other individuals of note. It's still quite busy. Where did you say you were going?
He's going to revisit some of the old haunts from the Peasant Rebellion. Maybe some of the cafes that they met at. Some of the undisclosed locations, at least to the wider world, where they held their meetings.
Okay. You find one such area, one such building that you recall it certainly appears off-putting in that there are no apparent lights on the first floor. It looks very uninviting, but you remember that it was very common during that time for ghouls and Canaanites interested in supporting the Peasants' Rebellion in facilitating change to go up to the second level and kind of conspire and speak on these things that most Londoners would rather not hear. Something of an early speakeasy, perhaps. And so you find this building on a large open cross street. A few carriages pass you by, the clop of hooves, and you can see that there is a single light on at the top level where you recall some of these meetings happened.
Cormac looks at the building wistfully, remembering some of the conversations he's had there. He doesn't want to go inside and disturb anybody, really. He's just remembering. Is there anybody hanging around this house?
Around outside of it, you see one man. Well, make a perception alertness. Standard difficulty. You see a man there, but something else might catch your eye. You notice this man, he's standing kind of against the wall. He looks just like a vagrant with nowhere else better to go. He's not dressed very well, but you do catch his eyes are a bit hypervigilant for someone with nowhere to really go, and he's not standing terribly far from the door. You suspect this man is loitering purposefully, perhaps as a watch.
That brings back even more memories. He will approach this man, slowly so as not to spook him.
He watches you coming and follows you the whole time with his eyes until you're close enough to speak.
Fair evening, Goodman. I was wondering if you might help me.
Do I look I have the resources to help you? You're better dressed than I am.
The kind of help I need is not material resource, but information. And he's going to whammy him with awe.
Alright, charisma performance, difficulty 7. Dice do not like you tonight.
No, but he has other means.
He seems to be kind of waiting for you to do something.
I wonder if you might tell me what the purpose of this building is.
Oh, right. Right. The purpose of this building is to hold the teeth of all the blokes who come by here to ask about what it's for. Piss off.
There's no need to be unkind. I have memories of this place. I simply wish to know what's become of it.
Hell if I know, mate. I just stand here.
Forgive me for saying so, sir, but the way you're standing here is what attracted my eye in the first place. You don't have the easy grace of one who's loitering. You're on the lookout for something, which leads me to believe you're on the lookout against someone who might want to get in here, is that correct?
Maybe I'm looking out for blokes like you who has lots of questions.
I gave you one warning, I won't give it again. Simply answer my question and I'll be on my way.
He spits on the ground in front of you and folds his arms.
Very well then, have it your way. And he's going to go in there. He's going to go up to him and grab him by the shirt and lift him up against the wall in an obvious display of inhuman strength.
God, Jesus. Mate, let me down. I didn't mean nothing by it.
Didn't you, though? You were being most rude.
How was I supposed to know you was one of them? Let me go.
Now we're getting somewhere. And he will let him down slowly.
Ugh. He slumps to the ground. Didn't have to be so mean about it. Could've just said. He puts a hand around his neck.
Now, if you know anything about me and mine, you know we don't exactly go advertising it. Who meets here now?
And he looks up to you. His face kind of curls up into a grimace, knowing that he's in a tough situation. I'll get in trouble if I let people in.
I don't want to go in. I told you as much. I just wanted information. This was once a meeting place of the Peasants' Rebellion, was it not?
Alright. He kind of pushes himself up the wall. Hitchcock.
Alexander Hitchcock.
He just kind of gestures his head up to the one light and looks back to you.
Now there's a man I know. Is he here tonight?
He sighs, feeling around his neck, and nods.
At first I wasn't sure I liked you, but you've turned most polite all of a sudden. Here's a shilling for your efforts. And as I told you, I'll be on my way.
He catches it in his hand and looks at it, and then looks back to you and still looks very uncertain. And is scratching at his beard.
Let's just not mention I was here, eh? Keep it our little secret, and he'll wink at him.
You don't get a wink back. He just pockets the coin.
Ta for now, friend.
Right, and you are going inside now?
No, he's not going to.
Oh, okay. Where are you going?
He's going to go around the back side of the building and see if he can see inside. But he'll try to do it surreptitiously.
Okay. It's definitely very hard. It's a 3-story building, and the only light is on the top level. And it's faint at that. You think maybe a single candle. Otherwise, the rest of this building is very dark. There are still some people on the streets, as I mentioned, so I'll have you do a dexterity stealth standard difficulty.
This will not go well.
You do manage to be fairly quiet, fairly surreptitious about moving around to the back and assessing what's going on. and you get the scene I described without really drawing any attention. No one really sees you skulk around behind this building. You do hear the sound of, from just where you came, just around the corner, you hear some boxes kind of get knocked over and a cat kind of screech and run off.
He is spooked for a moment, thinking he might have been caught, and can't help but chuckle at himself for being afraid of it, just a cat. He'll stare up at that window for a few moments, wondering if he should pursue his suspicions, but at this hour, Hitchcock would probably not want to be disturbed in whatever he's doing. So he'll file away what he knows for now and be on his way.
All right. You make your way back out to the streets, and by the time you get back to the front, the man leaning against the wall is gone. But
You can only imagine where he's gone. Probably inside to tell them.
And actually, as you think of that, look in that direction, you do see the door is just barely cracked now.
Traitorous cur. He mumbles to himself, and makes his way away quickly to avoid any uncomfortable situations.
Okay. So you move away quickly from this building that perhaps has an Elder Bruja in it. And the scene fades as we transition again. We will return to Elysium, following Elenid. You pass through this cloth screen into the ballroom and see much the scene that I described before. There are a number of people seated around the lounges and couches and tables and alcoves, but most what attracts your attention is the sight of Thomas and Robert sitting in the company of one of the men you saw before, along with the individuals you've been told are Bella Matea and Helen sitting with Amelia. What does Elenid do?
Elenid, seeing her companions and the wayward neonate, puts on her ever so polite smile and heads over.
You see that Thomas is sitting very awkwardly compared to everyone else. He has this chair turned backwards so that he faces over the back of it. There is actually another comfortable chair that's unoccupied, which juxtaposed to Thomas looks even more strange. But there's an open seat for you as you approach. And so I barely got out. Reported back to Hardestadt and asked for a different station. And they sent me here. You hear the end of the story as you draw close and everyone turns to appraise you, Elenid.
My apologies for intruding.
Oh. No problem at all, my dear. Please take a seat. Thomas here declined. He chose this instead.
I certainly shall. Thank you very much. And with that, she will take a seat, making no comment on what her colleague may or may not have done.
I think we've heard enough, perhaps, from Cesar, all due respect. I'm quite interested in the Camarilla. But we have 3 members of the Gauntlet here. Surely there is something to be told from your end. And Helen looks to each of you, but Eleanor especially.
Of what stories do you hold interest in?
Well, surely you can tell us something enticing.
Let's see, the more interesting of my stories has been wandering around as tactician.
I do believe she's fishing for details on more official business.
Oh, I'm well aware, but that she asked for an interesting story, and by all means, until we get more information, it isn't really that enticing.
Thomas actually chuckles. He's quite amused by the dodge.
But you all have seen the Covenant Princes, haven't you? What are they like?
Very much as you might imagine, different variations on the theme of Prince Ambrose. Old, ponderous, powerful.
Amelia's just kind of turning her head back and forth to listen. She hasn't really said anything during any of these stories. She's just soaking up this information. Bella turns to you, Thomas. Oh, come now, Thomas. If you're not going to tell us anything juicy, you can at least give us some details on these esteemed leaders of our wonderful nation. Something we might not have guessed.
Unfortunately, that also falls under what we know of them isn't all too terribly interesting as of yet.
I heard the one they call Kincaid is something of a deviant. Did he strike you that way, Robert? And she looks across the couch down to Robert.
Robert places a finger under his chin, looking thoughtfully back to Kincaid. I do not know if deviant is the word, but he was, seemed to be of the excitable sort.
I heard, as Helen looks from you back to the group, that one, the Prince of Canterbury, Octavia, I heard she's quite terrifying.
She's an odd duck, but I think terrifying is overselling it just a bit.
Odd, how do you mean? And she kind of leans forward with her hands on her chin.
She's a Cassandra.
I do very much doubt she is terrifying. How terrifying can a child be?
That depends to the degree which they are annoyed. An upset tantrum from a child can be quite a thing. An upset tantrum from a child who wields our powers? And he just lets that hang there.
All the same, it does surprise me sometimes, the princes they elected to join this covenant. I would be curious how they decided that. Some, not others. News has reached me that the once Prince of Nottingham is now nothing more than a vassal in the court of Prince Ragnar. To think one could reach the height of prince only to be brought low. I'm sure it was humiliating.
Even high places, competition does not cease.
Indeed. For every big fish, there seems always to be a bigger one.
Took the words right out of my mouth. There's always an older canine.
Or a more politically savvy one.
Well, my doves, it has been a delight speaking with all of you, enjoying the company of the famed Gauntlet, but I must attend to some business upstairs. I hope to see you around soon. And she turns to Amelia and brings a hand to her cheek before standing. And the rest of you as well, of course. Please feel free to drop by my manor if the fancy should take you.
You've already seen me twice in a single month. That's more frequently than normal.
She smiles.
Fare thee well.
She looks back to you and blows you a kiss before walking off.
Robert makes a mock grab at the air.
Amelia seems to watch her go, something in awe of her gaze. Will you be staying in London long, then? Helen looks to the rest of you.
A week, maybe a little longer, depending on matters we are looking into.
Oh, how very mysterious. And she smirks at you.
I don't mean to step on the toes of your kin.
I'm sure my kin are well aware.
Yes, we'd scarcely been in London an hour before one of them was skulking about, following us around.
Well, you are the Gauntlet, my dear. You're going to draw some attention.
Odd that that attention should precede us to a hunting ground we hadn't yet planned on attending.
That is odd. Perhaps you're being followed. And she smiles mischievously.
Or perhaps we simply tripped over something we weren't meant to.
Oh. And she kind of makes a mock, exaggerated surprise face.
I was going to look into your expression at this, see if you can figure anything else more out.
Sure, perception, empathy. Standard difficulty. You're not sure. You think it's clear that she's putting out, she's being entertaining, she's being playful. But you do feel like there's something that she's not saying. Maybe she's playing it up too much.
Ah, Helen. Perhaps you can help with this investigation of sorts.
But if I can, I will.
I'm sure you have quite the knowledge on the goings and comings of this fair city.
Not quite as much as I would like, my dear. I am something of a fixture in this place.
Is that so?
She smiles and nods, recrossing her legs to turn towards you. I rarely leave if I can help it. It's so droll out there. It's so full of... ugh.
Well, how often do the other kindred come here? I'm specifically seeking a Cassandra.
Well, depending on the night, many come. As far as Cassandra's, well, I've not seen some of those in a while. There was one, Muriel her name was, but she had a foul run-in with her sire and then got caught up with some business with the prince. She ended up staked, and I don't know what happened to her. There was another, Simone de Champs. She used to be here and there, but I think she got a bit paranoid of some of the neonates around here. She stopped coming back here decades ago.
Ah, so none venture into these halls then.
I'm sure there's some amongst the riffraff here. And she kind of looks out to the crowds. Although I don't know what good they'll do you. What fancies you, my dear?
I simply need an item identified. Perhaps the Cassandras can offer some insight.
Well, you are the gauntlet. If what you say is true, you could speak to that Octavia. She's not so terrifying as they say. I've heard some ghastly rumors, though.
When the time comes, the council will, I'm sure, seek everything we have, but it would be better to present it to them.
Seems like a waste of bureaucracy when you have talented individuals among the Covenant who have to get their hands dirty once in a while. Well, don't tell her I said that. And she puts her hand on your hand to reassure you.
My lips are sealed.
Of course, if she is as terrifying as you imagine her to be, she probably already knows.
Oh, don't say things like that.
That is very much a possibility.
Thomas smiles broadly, very pleased with himself.
I'm sure even if she did know, she would know I was jesting. And she kind of looks out to the air around her. Just jesting. What rumors have you heard? Amelia finally breaks her silence, looking over to Helen. Oh, well. And she looks back to Amelia and kind of stops. Not for one so young. Don't worry yourself, little one.
Come now, she's merely trying to get the lay of the land.
Well, I heard some rumors of a hospital that she might have cared for or does care for, and it's supposed to be some small circle of hell, they say. Supposedly even Canaanites have been caught up in it and not returned the same. But it's just a rumor, I'm certain. And she looks back to Amelia, smiling reassuringly.
How is Amelia taking all this in?
Amelia's got her eyes just wide. She seems very afraid and perhaps surprised. It's you get the sensation of information overload from everything she's been hearing. It's a lot to take in. This whole culture, this whole society, you have to imagine is something of a shock to a small town fledgling.
And you, Caesar.
Yes.
Since we have more here, perhaps you'd like to speak of the Giovanni again.
Elened's attention immediately turns to the would-be speaker.
He looks around as if pointing out something that should have been obvious, but then looks back to you and nods, and then he looks back to the group, mostly at Elened and Thomas. How much have you heard already?
I have not had a chance to tell them anything yet.
They are merchants who came into their unlife through manipulation, and I understand that they are actively seeking their parent clan, for lack of a better term.
Yes, to the point of offering payment for it.
Oh, now that is news.
Caesar scowls at that. Of course they would. Stoop so low as to bribe mercenaries. To hunt what remains of the Cappadocians. It is a great crime. one of the most learned of our kind, is destroyed by Augustus. And it seems a challenge even to convince the world of that. He shakes his head, rubbing at his beard.
Would that the same outrage be spoken in front of the Tremere?
I cannot speak to that. They are not to be trusted, certainly, but they've also aided us in the formation of our Camarilla. We cannot forget that.
Yes, never offend a valuable asset.
And between the Giovanni and his anarchs, we are in need of allies, which is why I'm here. They threaten not just the continent, but this land as well.
How do they threaten England?
The Giovanni? Or the
No,
anarchs?
the Anarchs. The Giovanni are an obvious threat. They make no attempt to hide themselves.
The anarchs, from what we can tell, are bent on nothing less than the total disorder and disarray of everything we have tried to create, alongside and perhaps in the shadows of the kind. If it was not a great enough tragedy to lose Cappadocius, it is said that some of the founders of other clans are starting to fall to these anarchs now. They seem to feast after any elder they can claim manipulated the younger. That is a tradition older than any can remember, as old as the progenitors themselves. The old lead and build stability. There are, of course, those with their corruptions, their failures. But that does not justify what these beasts are doing. Rampaging, slaughtering. They threaten the Sons of the Blood. They threaten us all. They will bring down whatever stability we hope to retain in this land, in Europe and abroad. It threatens England just as much as it threatens the continent. They will tear this place apart if they have their way. Even London will not be safe.
Are they simply bloodthirsty, or do they have some ideal to strive towards?
Their ideal is chaos. They seek to undo what the elders have created. Perhaps to form something new, but of what you could form in such ruin would be nothing more than lumps of flesh and blood. They will be the end of us, I assure you that.
Perhaps it is simply a response to the treatment of the younger by their elders, especially where it concerns evading the Inquisition.
As I said, there are those who have had their failures, and I have met them. But that does not justify what I have seen. the Inquisition will seek out their activity. They are doing more harm than good, if they can be said to be doing any good at all.
Curious. What resources do you have at your disposal already?
The founders are attempting to align a number of clans together in the Camarilla. We have reached significant cities such as Paris, but to gain London support would be very much appreciated.
I expect that's a matter you'll have to take up with Ambrose himself.
He nods grimly. When last we spoke, he seemed reticent to help. Been trying to speak with Genevieve, but she will not budge.
She's like that.
If I am to understand from what Bella Matea spoke earlier, the group of you, and she gestures to the three of you, have great status among the English Canaanites. Is that correct?
Don't overestimate that.
Yes, our positions are rather new.
And by all accounts, quite tenuous.
All the same, I will take influence where I can find it. I hope, from what I have said, you can see the reason behind the Camarilla, behind including England. Perhaps, if you have the chance, you will speak your words of encouragement into the ears of those who could make change.
You have made your case quite clearly. I will definitely think on it, though I do not promise that anyone who makes these sorts of choices will keep our counsel.
I cannot ask any more. Thank you. Yes, well, and Helen seems to break the silence once more. I believe I also have some business to attend to. It has been lovely speaking with all of you.
Gone so soon.
Oh, don't worry, my dear, I'll be back.
Perhaps we will meet again.
She nods and smiles, and gives you each a nod in turn before moving to leave.
And at that, Thomas will also rise and pick up his chair so he can return it. He's not moving from the spot yet, but he's readying himself.
Yes, with that we should likely see what our fourth is up to.
Quite.
Caesar nods. I wish you safe travels out there. From the preliminary reports, there are some threats the Anarchs may pose here, in fact. I thought perhaps it had not reached this far, but be careful out there.
And you too. With
Thomas
that,
will-
Elened will get up.
Thomas will extend a hand towards Amelia.
Amelia's been watching Cesar very intently from his words and barely notices you and kind of startles, and she takes your hand. Are we leaving now?
I wouldn't ask you to join us, but it is growing later, and a young lady alone walking the streets of London might raise more questions.
She nods. At this point, Caesar has stood as well, and you can see that actually, leaning against the far side of his chair, there was a saber in a scabbard, which he picks up the sheath scabbard and just kind of holds it. He bows his head to each of you in turn and picks up a hat nearby, lowering it over him and turning to leave. And soon enough, the four of you are alone.
Thomas will go ahead and return the chair and wait to see what his associates choose to do.
What is Elena doing?
Elened has every intention on leaving.
Robert.
Robert's once again heading towards the exit, scanning the crowd, seeing if anyone else new came in.
Make a perception alertness roll. Difficulty 8. Oh, is that really all you have?
Hmm?
You succeed. You are leaving, and you're about to pass through the cloth screen. You're touching the cloth. Out of the corner of your eye, in the far corner of the room, in one of these alcoves at the edge, you see a small humanoid, heavily clothed. It's something of an odd shape. You know it's humanoid, but only barely. And it's got a large, heavy hat. And he's watching you leave. You do not recognize this individual. You don't know how long he's been there either. You're just noticing it now.
Intrigued by this, Robert will heighten his senses and begin heading towards this figure, locking eyes with it.
Alright. Thomas and Elenid, you're already through the cloth screen leading Amelia through, but you notice that Robert isn't coming with you immediately.
Would you like if one of us stayed with him, or shall we just go?
Robert's a big boy. He can handle himself, I'm sure.
Fair enough.
Though, if you'd like to stay and see the show, don't look to me for objections.
I have no intention on staying, and yeah, this type of scene has never really been my thing.
Thomas shrugs a bit. In that case, allow me to escort you young ladies through town.
Amelia nods, following after you. And the three of you leave Elysium. We turn back to Robert. As you now have caught the attention of this man or thing in this alcove, small aqueducts of water line the booth, and a little jet spouting water into it creates a small amount of white noise as you approach. And as you approach, you can see this man, you think, is resting himself and fixing his hat a bit. And upon closer look, you can see it's quite a hideous looking man. The face is heavily scarred, and half of it almost looks gone. The other half is not much appealing either, and there seems to be a large gash in the side of the head, which doesn't seem to be going away. He doesn't say anything until you approach, and even as you get to the alcove, he seems to remain silent. And the one good eye you can see coming out of under the hat is just watching you the whole time.
Robert squints his eyes a bit as he approaches this creature. But still, he'll greet him and do a bow.
What can I do you for, mate? You hear a voice from this man.
I've noticed you seem to be watching.
Aye. Watch a lot of things. Watch a lot of people. Thought you lot were out.
We were, but you seem so interesting, I had to just come and greet you.
And the longer you stand here, the more you can smell something. It smells like a pustulent wound, like old skin that seems to be infiltrating this alcove.
Robert will immediately unheighten his sense of smelling.
Even without hiding the smell, of course, you could choose not to breathe, but you know that it's a heavy, pungent smell. You think it's actually emanating from the open wound in the side of his head. Interesting. Can't say it's the meanest thing anyone's ever said to me.
Indeed. I am Robert Devere, and who may I have the pleasure of knowing?
Name's Declan Orchard. You call me Apples. Take a seat, Lord Devere.
Very well.
You, pretty famous, aren't you? That ring on you. He gestures out to you.
A little bit. Mostly standing on the shoulders of others, who unfortunately are turned to ash now, I suppose.
Aye. Tragedy that. He nods. Think it'll happen to you.
Well, certainly this ring makes me a target.
You could hawk it. I bet it fetches a fair price. Move to Paris. He He nods sagely.
Well, who's to say I would be accepted in Paris? This is my home, after all.
Go ahead.
This is my home, after all.
I reckon a fop like you would blend in pretty well. But it's your call.
Robert just gives a polite smile at that. Have you been watching us long, Apples?
Long enough? And he smiles a terrible face. There are so many lines crisscrossing his lips. Some of the skin exposes when he smiles. It's a terrible sight.
Indeed, on your own, or perhaps Helen put you up to it?
Ah, I may sound young, mate. I'm not that young. Helen don't need to tell me shit. I'll do what I want.
Independent, eh? That's good to hear. Have you been keeping busy these nights?
Very busy. Very busy indeed.
Again, at your own behest, and Robert will scan him for any expressions he may be letting loose.
Sure, perception, empathy, standard difficulty. Wow, 6 successes. He's not nearly as good at lying as you are at reading faces, even faces as terrible as his. And it's more in the voice than his face. There's not enough confidence when he says that he's independent. But you do believe him when he says he's been busy.
Hopefully not busy watching us.
With rings like that on your fingers, could you really blame me?
No, but perhaps if I ask you to help me in something else, you would find something more interesting and perhaps a chance to get closer to us.
Now you're talking. What do you have in mind, Lord Devere?
I'm seeking the assistance of Cassandra. Apparently they did not come to Elysium. At least, not one of any renown.
Give me one moment to look at my notes. I'm certain there's one or two in the city right now, but good luck finding them, and good luck getting them sane enough to say anything meaning. But I do know of one. Not here, mind you, if you really have to find one.
Indeed. Where at then?
See in Norwick. Dame by the name of Rakeldis de Ververch. She's quite old from what I can gather. No one knows her story. But If you're looking for Cassandra with some know-how, might start there.
Perhaps that will come in handy. And tell me, have you ever visited the Tower of London?
He smirks. No, and I mean not to if I can avoid it. I've seen some close kin lost to that place. Rather avoid it. Tough memories and all.
Well, perhaps I should get going.
What interest do you have in the tower?
Fair enough question. I am interested in the lord that is being held prisoner there.
Lord, you mean Beaufort?
Yes, precisely.
Now, what interest would you have in Lord Beaufort?
For now, just perhaps a coincidence, but who knows what that may turn into. I was in one of his areas under his titles not too long ago.
You were in Somerset.
What do you know of the place?
Not a whole lot, I'm afraid.
I take it you do not leave London often.
I leave when I need to. But you're right. I don't leave often.
Well, yes, the area I was in is suffering without their liege. There are suspicious characters.
So what do you mean to do? Break them out?
That may be a fool's attempt. No, but, perhaps just to get a message to him.
What, like a scroll? That wouldn't be so hard.
You don't think it would be? Yes, like a scroll.
Who can say what he'll do? I'll just wipe his ass with it.
At least it would provide him some comfort in that place. Having something proper to wipe his arse, that is.
He smiles at that. You're a very kind gentleman, Lord of Air, to be so given to the Duke. And to be so considerate of his arse.
Quite.
I might be able to arrange something like that. I have some resources in this city. If that's all you want.
Indeed, I would be appreciative. I suppose you know where I'm staying.
How'd you guess?
A hunch. That may not have been you where we were meeting, but it was just a shot in the dark.
As it turns out, I do. Why don't you, write up your letter? Perhaps I'll drop by in, night or two.
We have a deal then.
Of course. There is some risk in this. I would like a small boon in exchange. I don't think that's unfair to ask.
Not unfair at all. So be it.
And you got yourself a deal, Master de Vere. And he extends a hand.
Robert takes a moment but gives a firm handshake.
Roll your willpower to do this. You're too uppity to not have something like this. To not gag. Alright, you pull it off. You're able to stomach shaking hands with this filthy thing. You feel some residue on your hands afterwards. Kind of tickles you.
Robert gives a slight glance at his hand after withdrawing and quickly closes it and gives a polite nod towards Apples. Farewell then, Apples.
Farewell to you, Lord of Air. And he tips his hat to you.
And Robert will quickly begin walking out, seeking something to wipe his hand on.
Well, the cloth curtain you're about to pass on is pretty good.
And then that is what he will use.
Alright, there's a nice little stain on the screen after you leave. It's a dark brownish green. Alright, and as you pass through the screen to leave Elysium, the scene fades. And we are 2 hours deep, so we will take a break here. And we will come back. We'll say 15 minutes, give a good break. Sound good?
Cool.
Alrighty.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Everyone run and hide.
Ugh.
And a bear.
Just enough time to slam down some soup. Alright. Good to restart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not another reboot.
So we enter scene again, focusing in back at Cormac de Courcy, having met briefly with Simone Deschamps and an encounter with perhaps a lookout for Alexander Hitchcock. Where does Cormac mean to go at this point?
Cormac's interest in revisiting his old haunts is somewhat shaken by the confrontation he just had with the mortal outside of possibly Hitchcock's new house. So, he's going to return to the manor house to see if the others have had their fill of Elysium.
Alright. We'll transition over there as the group of you again comes back together. And within an hour, in bits and pieces, all five of you, including Amelia, return to Thomas Chamberlain's manor. We'll say the last to arrive is probably Robert, who enters the study and sees the group of you there, unless some of you meant to do something entirely different than regroup. Otherwise, I'll assume you're in the study.
Leonard had every intention to attempt to regroup.
Same with Thomas.
Right. So you see the last member of your group, Robert, ushered in by staff, and the door is closed behind you. Amelia is sitting there as well, watching Robert enter, and you are the last to enter, and at last you are all together again. Night is getting later. It's really close to 2 in the morning at this point, going on 3.
Well, I sent the letter out to my ghoul. Though we can move on from here if you so choose, I can leave a note or something here for her to follow our tracks, so to speak.
I do hope the carriage is small enough to fit aboard ship.
What was the size of that carriage she had before?
It is fairly large. I'd say the dimensions are roughly 5 by 10. About 7 feet high. It would be tough to get onto a ship. It would be tough to get on your standard cog. A very large one, perhaps, but it would be awkward.
She would only be able to take a ship if it was a rather large one. As such, it would likely be something traveled by the roads.
Well, we'll see what I can arrange. If needs be, we can have her divert from here and meet us in Lincoln.
Of course.
What is Cormac doing at this point?
Cormac sat down in a chair now, reading a book on philosophy. just listening to their conversation. He has yet to ask them how their night went.
What port do you think the ship from London would take us?
There are two that pop to mind immediately. Boston's a less well-established port, but it's on the right side of the river. It's about the same distance, but Hull is a good deal more busy and should have a port on the south side of the river yet. Certainly would be more accommodating for a larger vessel.
Well, we've had a Cassandra.
What's that you say? Cormac says, looking up from his book.
A Cassandra, we've had no luck in finding one.
Why didn't you tell me you were looking for one?
Why? Did you have any luck in locating one?
Quite by accident, it seems. One Simone Deschamps, a Cassandra I met some time ago, during my first umbrage in London.
Did you ask her to take a look at the axe?
Of course I didn't. I didn't think of it at the time. She's a quite paranoid and flighty little thing.
Out of curiosity, is this a name that Thomas recognizes at all?
Simone? Yes. Yes, you recognize the name Simone.
And what part of the city was this?
He'll tell them where he met her.
It's some cross street of no great significance, not far from here.
Is that in a domain known for belonging to anyone?
Not that you know of.
Would Thomas know?
It's within the domain, technically, of the Bruja Alexander Hitchcock. Although it's at the edge.
Sounds to me like she was skulking about the edges of the Bruja Primogen's domain.
Well, that was his domain then. I ran into one of his lackeys. He's out and about tonight in one of my old haunts. I chose not to disturb him. I had no reason to.
I wonder if he has relations with Mom.
If she's been skulking about his domain, it's quite possible. How desperate are you to find her?
How desperate are you to get more of a insight on this axe?
Quite.
It sounds like we have something to do tomorrow night.
I'm not certain she'll be the best help to you.
More help than the axe by itself, for certain.
It is certain she has some of the prophetic gift that some of the Cassandras are known for. She knows some things about my past that I haven't told anyone. And let them slip quite by accident. It was rather off-putting.
The real question is, will we be able to understand what she tells us?
Perhaps if we write it down and think about it hard enough, something will come forth.
Do you have any idea where she might go the following night, or are we going to go on a mad hunt around the city?
I don't know where she was going tonight. She was carrying a bundle of fake fruit and bread.
To and from the market streets.
She said she uses it as a sort of disguise. But the streets have grown dangerous over the years.
That does hit a bit close to home for Thomas, but he shifts a little bit, doesn't say much.
If we're going to ask his permission to look for her, perhaps we should do so tonight, where we know where he is. That way we avoid any unnecessary entanglements on the morrow.
Both Thomas and Cormac would be aware enough of Simone's history and want for flightiness to know that, especially in the most recent decades, since she's become more of a traveler, it would be very difficult to find someone like Simone Deschamps, even if you knew that she was in the domain that you found her in tonight, and you don't even know that.
Of course, there is another option. Seeing how hard it might be to track down a needle in a haystack.
Or more than a nut pile.
Alexander is a Bruja elder. He would possess the gifts of our clan. Perhaps we could coerce him to summon her for us.
Marvelous.
We could demand it. We have these. And he'll hold up his ring.
Quite so.
It would definitely be the quickest of the options.
And time is of the essence, as we all know. He smiles.
It might even be done tonight, before she's had time to quit the city.
She would be offended by it. We'll make an enemy in her. She already thinks I've been following her and giving her nasty looks, even though I haven't seen her in these past 70 years.
In her defense, so to speak, she does tend to think that everyone's following her.
And perhaps no harm will be done to her fragile humors. Well then, should we be off? The hour grows late.
Sure. I'll just make sure
Thomas.
to bring the axe with. Go ahead.
Thomas nods a bit and calls for Kasim.
It's not long before the door opens and your ghoul stands there.
Amelia, do you read and write?
Me? No, I do not.
Very well. Kasim, would you be so kind as to begin her lessons? If she is to be leaving our company sooner than anticipated, I would see her at least well armed.
Yes, sir. And he bows. This way, please. He looks to Amelia, who looks around and then slowly gets up to follow after him. And he is ushering her away, closing the door behind him.
And now that she is gainfully employed, he gestures towards the door.
Elened waits for one of the people who actually know the city to lead the way.
Cormac will go out first, quite excited to have something to do again.
And with that, she will follow.
Next will be Robert, stepping outside.
Thomas, with absolutely no idea where in the world they're wandering to, is going to bring up the rear. But he will duck upstairs and grab the axe before he departs the house.
All right.
When he joins us, is the axe in plain view or is it covered by something?
It would be covered in heavy canvas. Something that looks as inconspicuous as possible for a gymongous axe.
It requires a lot of canvas. But you hide it. And soon enough, the group of you is on your way out of the manor into the streets of London again. So we'll transition. So we follow the group of you as Cormac leads you all through the streets back to the 3-story building at this large intersection of streets. And there is still a single faint light near one of the end windows on the 3rd floor. The man you met outside is not there anymore, Cormac.
That doesn't surprise him. This is the place, he says. Let's be polite and knock first.
I was half hoping someone would use the axe.
Well, that would be most entertaining. Sorry. Well, that would be most entertaining. Using such a thing on a door is hardly the best option when we're trying to garner a favor.
Ah, well, we'll have to stick to the mundane. And Robert will walk up and knock on the door.
Alright, you knock a few times, and after a couple minutes of waiting, you hear some locks undone on the other side, as the door creaks open into darkness and a face peers out. A face that Cormac recognizes. It is the man that he roughed up before. Oh, shite. You again?
Me again, he says, with that grin. This time, however, we have official business. It was most fortuitous I run into tonight.
Well, I'm not stopping four of you, am I? And he opens the door wider to step out of the way.
We'd prefer, I'm sure, if you announced our presence.
Fine. And he nods, and immediately as you step in, you realize there's not much space in here before it goes immediately into a staircase that ascends.
Does it look how Cormac remembers it from back in the day?
Similar. There's been construction to seal off a lot of the first floor, such that when you enter, there's really nothing but this staircase ascending.
It's cozy.
He precedes you, going upstairs, all the way up to where you can see another faint light kind of illuminates this staircase going down. It's very dim. What does Elenid do?
Have we been told that we can start our trek up?
No, this man just disappeared after Cormac asked him to introduce you.
Alright. She'll stand there and wait, glance around the room to... I know it's small, but is there anything interesting there?
You see where there probably used to be hallways going off into different rooms or parts of this first floor. It looks like it's been plastered and filled with wood, such that there are no real passages. It's been painted over. A lot of work has gone into sealing up this first floor and making it so it really only ascends up.
So, how long do we give him?
As long as it takes, I suppose.
It is, well, the night hours are waning quite a bit.
We're not dealing with some backcountry praxis. This is a primogen of London. Let him take his time.
Even calling on him in this way could be considered an insult. So we should try to be as polite as possible.
So noted.
About a minute later, you hear creaking of steps and wooden floorboards of these stairs as this man comes back down and descends about halfway the last staircase to you before he nods the group of you. He'll see you now.
Why, thank you, good sir. Or man. And Robert begins walking up.
Elenid will follow shortly after.
Then Cormac.
Thomas is once again going to bring up the rear, mostly because he's got that axe and doesn't want to be the first one in the room.
All right. You ascend up, and you see that the second floor is much like the first. More plaster, more walls. The second floor has largely been sealed off. There's really only this ascending staircase. So there's really only one way to go, and so he leads you up one staircase, double back, start going up the other one, and finally at the top, you walk a short distance, and you see that the light is stronger. At the end of this hallway, there's an opening of the door, and the man you've been following steps in.
Go on then, he won't bite. I hope.
Robert smiles and walks in.
Alright. And Cormac?
Cormac goes in as well. He's still intimidated by Hitchcock, but he can't let that show now.
Elned puts on her usual polite smile and heads in as well.
And Thomas.
Very much like Elenid, he'll smile as he enters, though he's going to keep the axe down, even though it is covered in cloth.
Right. A group of you enter into this room. You find a study, and much like other studies you've been in, it's a cozy area. There's a small fireplace, a number of large armchairs inside, and although the outside looks very off-putting and uninviting, the inside of this top floor is fairly well decorated. Not quite as nice as perhaps Thomas's or the others you've been in, but it's well put together. You see a few busts in the corner, and there are two individuals besides the man who led you in. You see one man who's very well dressed. He's somewhat short. He's only about 5.5 feet, but he's very clean shaven, like a soldier, and dressed very decadently in plate armor. You recognize the sheriff, Cash Solis, standing off kind of by this very low going fireplace. It's a very small fire. And in the armchair, you see a fairly large man. You can tell from the way he's sitting, when he's standing, he must be quite tall. He's got a very long red regal robe on and somewhat messy and disheveled brown hair, and he seems to turn to you from sitting in this chair. You see Alexander Hitchcock. And he steps up, rising from his chair. Ah. I was told some guests had arrived. Please, most esteemed guests, join me.
Robert will step forward, attempting to be as graceful as possible, and doing all the etiquette things he needs to do.
Deciding if I want to risk you guys running more etiquette rules or not. I'm leaning towards not.
Yeah, know what? Let's be amusing. Everyone botches, we all die.
We'll skip it this time.
Alright.
So Robert enters. What does Cormac do?
Cormac enters as well, and he'll go so far as to give Alexander a bow. and a nod for Cash Solus as well. The last time you saw him then was not on the best terms.
He's watching you with steely eyes. You can tell if there is one person that isn't a Venture Toreador that really was not fond of you. It was Cash Solus for how many fights he had to break up because of you.
Elened will enter as well and curtsy, as is common etiquette to do.
And Thomas brings up the rear, tipping an imaginary hat. And then, I would imagine, stands abreast with his fellows, sets the head of the axe on the ground, and lays both hands across the pommel of it, with the ring of the gauntlet face up.
Hitchcock looks at this large object you've brought in, made even larger by the coverings wrapped around it. The esteemed gauntlet comes to join me at this late hour, and brings what?
An item in our investigation of the recent demise of the last gauntlet.
And he kind of gestures towards it faintly, as if to reveal it.
Thomas glances at Cormac for a moment, shrugs, and slips the canvas off, and hefts the considerably larger than normal axe.
You can see that Cash has put a hand at his hilt, although Alexander seems not at all concerned with the appearance of this massive weapon. The man that Cormac roughed up definitely takes a few steps back.
It previously belonged to Wulfric. Our goal was to find an individual who could try to see into what may have transpired before their demise.
Of course, I'd recognize that weapon anywhere. Wulfric was a good man for a pagan. He nods, looking at the axe. May God have mercy on his soul, wherever it has taken him.
Amen.
He smiles at that.
Forgive us, night intrusion. I happened upon your man earlier in the evening, and he might have let slip who was staying here. He gives Cash a glance, because the man's probably already told them how he came across that information.
Yes, Gabriel does what he can, but I should not expect him to stand against the likes of you, of course. And he kind of smirks.
This house is very dear to my heart. I came to see what had become of it. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, you understand. Just a series of serendipitous occasions.
Yes. Yes, you did spend some time here. Your last stay at London, didn't you? I recall. I'm afraid the building has gone out of disuse. It is rarely used by our clan for the discourse and debate it once was, but from time to time, he glances back to Cash, we do engage in the debate that our clan was once known for.
Forgive us again, Master Hitchcock, but we must ask a favor of you if we might.
I would be leery to refuse the entirety of the gauntlet. What would you ask of me?
The Cassandra, Simone Deschamps. I ran into her a bit earlier tonight. She was in a fine state.
Yes. Simone Deschamps has always been something of a snake lathered in oil. Difficult precisely to predict or control. I wonder what brings her back here.
That I do not know, but she's been skulking about your domain.
He shrugs, as if unconcerned. She has been known to skulk here and there. Truly a tragic thing. Not her to fly, though very difficult to get close to.
And yet we must. She has the gift of sight. We need that now.
Many Cassandra bear that gift, although their answers are difficult to read or interpret. Why is she so important to you?
Because she's the only one we found. At least the only one of any importance.
What do you think that she will tell you, should you find her again?
More than we know now.
More than you know about this axe.
More than we know about the death of our kinsman.
Perhaps.
She said something to me tonight. Something that makes me believe she's just the person for the job.
What did she tell you, pray tell?
It's not important, he says. Something I've kept secret for a long time. The point is that she knew this secret. As if she'd plucked it from my very soul. If she can do that with this axe, we might get somewhere after all.
He smiles faintly as he sits down again in his chair, getting comfortable. Many have tried to harness the gifts of the Cassandras, and many have gone mad in pursuing their words. Are you so certain that even if you hear some prophecy from her lips, it will give you what you want?
Cormac looks to the others.
Something is better than nothing.
Is it? Was the apple given in the prophetic Garden of Eden better than nothing?
Nothing is ever certain, Lord Chamberlain. Lord Hitchcock. What we can be more assured of is that she will tell us something we do not know, which is more than we have at present. Whether or not we'll be able to determine its usefulness is a chance I'm willing to take.
It is possible what happened in the Gauntlet somehow relates to a group of anarchic Canaanites who've made their home around the Dorchester area. We'd like to know if that's a dead end.
His face grows dour at that description. Perhaps you might prey upon it. Think of your options. In the meditation of prayer, many insights come. You must not always think of prophecy from the gifts of our blood. There are many truths to be gained from the Lord, for the Lord knows all secrets.
Thomas visibly bites his, well, not visibly bites his tongue, but is obviously clenching his jaw, holding back.
Have you make a willpower roll not to speak your mind. Difficulty 5.
Well, that is a lovely sentiment. It is hardly something that could be used as evidence.
You're able to keep
Did
your
not the Lord also send prophet? Perhaps this is such situation where we could use one.
If the Lord means for you to hear her words, I think perhaps she would be delivered to you, and you would not pull her.
Unfortunately, she was delivered, but without... Go ahead. You go ahead.
I did not see the importance of it at the time. That's all I wanted to say.
Otherwise, we would have not have even come here seeking her again.
In a city as large as London, what are the chances I'd run into one Cassandra in the middle of the street? Almost none, I'd say. And one who's been absent for so long? Is that not God's hand?
Roll your charisma expression difficulty 7.
That I can do.
He seems to focus in on you and speak these words. Perhaps you are right, Cormac de Courcy. Perhaps it is a divine message. I have failed to build much rapport with Simone, unfortunately. I do not know when I will next see her.
Cormac looks uncomfortable knowing what they want to ask, and perhaps we'll allow another of the more verbal fellows to spit it out.
Could you not then draw her to you?
He looks at you with narrowed eyes. You would have me use my abilities to coerce her here into my home.
The Gauntlet asks this of you, yes.
He turns his head so he's looking at you sidelong. And he looks back to Cormac as if for acknowledgement that this is what he meant.
Cormac nods solemnly. An official request, I'm afraid.
as I said, I am leery to deny the requests of the Gauntlet. Much as I disagree with your methodology. He's looking at each of you in turn with a stern look. Give me some time, and I will see what I can do.
Thank you, Lord. There was no one else we could trust with this matter.
He turns away from you. You should have put more trust in the Lord.
I believe that's what the other Gauntlet would have said too.
And he goes quiet for a moment.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make that willpower roll again.
Did not speak your mind?
Yep.
Okay. Same difficulty. Yeah, you're still holding on.
Very well, then. I pray that the Lord moves your heart to assist us fully in this.
You mentioned some time. Is there any specific time you would like us to return?
You said that she was here not long ago. I imagine she may yet return in hours. If she has gone far, I may be committing her to death if the sun rises.
She won't have had time to go far. It was only a few hours ago.
Let us hope for her soul. You are correct.
Cormac shifts uneasily.
All right. He seems to take a stance. It's very stone-like. His hands are together. It looks like he's almost praying, but his eyes are closed and he's not saying anything. He seems to be focusing. He's going to be there for a while. What do the rest of you need to do?
Thomas is going to remove himself from a situation where he may very well say some shit he'll regret. And he's going to head back downstairs.
Elened will give this man his privacy while he's summoning the Cassandra as well.
Cormac gives Cash a knowing glance and smiles apologetically before leaving as well.
Cash remains in the corner, his metal vambraced arms folded across him. He looks very unhappy. And what is Robert doing?
Robert's studying Cash. But he'll leave the room.
Okay. Yeah, he glares at each of you in turn. Cash does. You don't hear anything from Alexander for the next 3 hours. He just stays there like a stone statue, and you know that it is going to be dawn very soon. you're at this point, if you're going to stay there the full 3 hours, it'll be too late for you to return to the manor in time. We'll start with Cormac. Are you staying there the full 3 hours? Before you notice any change in him?
No, probably not. He'll want to get back to the manor house as soon as possible. He hopes that this request will not doom Simone to death, and that she'll still have the peace of, or the, there's the word I'm looking for, strength of mind to find a place to rest before she continues her journey back.
And Robert?
As he's not been offered a place to stay at this manor, we'll at least question it at noticing how long this is taking.
Verbally question it?
Yeah, he'll go up and question if he could stay the night.
You're asking
Another day.
Hitchcock?
If he's not in too meditative of a stance.
He's exactly the way you left him 3 hours ago.
Jeez. Well, is Cash staying here?
He is. He seems to be patrolling. He looks out the window sometimes.
In that case, he'll just ask Cash.
Okay, what do you ask him?
Since dawn is approaching soon, do you think it's appropriate for us to stay here?
He's looking out the window when you speak, and he turns to you. Aye. You should be fine.
Thank you. And with that, Robert will...
Alright, so Cormac's gone, Robert's remaining. What does Elena do?
While she is while she is interested in what happened to her former compatriot, she has no intentions of burning alive. Nor does she wish to impose on a situation that is most imposing. As such, she will likely return to the manor.
Okay, Cormac and Elena are gone, Robert remains. What does Thomas do?
On the one hand, I kind of want to be there when and if Simone returns, but on the other hand, Alexander is really pissing me off.
What will win out?
Not one to leave a teammate behind. Thomas is going to head up and check on Robert, since he hasn't come back out.
Robert will relay that we have permission to stay in this unique circumstance.
So be it. And he'll park his ass somewhere until either Simone shows up or they have to retreat from the sun.
Alright. You can see through these windows, the sky is getting bluer, and you think you see the beginnings of what might be light on the horizon, although it is very foggy still. When Alexander's man comes running up the steps. A woman is at the door. Shall I let her in? And Hitchcock's eyes finally open, and he nods to the man. Quickly, if you would. And he looks around to the rest of you. The two of you, I should say.
Wonderful.
You have our thanks. Though, I wonder if we might not, along with the lady, spend the day here.
Well, given your request, it seems none of us have much of a choice in that now, do we?
Of course, we greatly appreciate your hospitality.
He's silent as he moves to close the wooden shutters on the doors, on the windows, I should say. And meanwhile, the man comes back upstairs, and as he's entering, he steps out of the way and looks towards the entrance. And you see Simone Deschamps enter, looking very concerned and very anxious. But she's taking slow, steady steps into the room, generally in the direction of Hitchcock. What am I doing here?
We have requested that Hitchcock summon you. Apologies for the disturbance.
She looks around at everyone in the room very quickly, her eyes darting. She seems to look at your hand and then back to you and over to Thomas, then to his hand, and then back to Thomas's face. It's a flurry of movements of her eyes.
It should be noted that the axe is laying in a corner, not in anyone's hand.
Hitchcock has returned to his seat, although he's looking fairly unhappy. Yes, my dear, it seems you have been summoned by the gauntlet through me.
If it's any consolation, we're hoping you might help bring justice to your kinsman.
What do you know of my kinsman? And she looks at you.
Did you know, Wulfric?
She looks at the axe in the corner and then back to you. Many knew Wulfric.
Then you know that he is no longer of this world.
Of course I know. What am I, a fool?
We would wish to know more about that night. Anything you can share with us would be most welcome.
I'm sure we'd all like to know more about that night.
Thomas reaches over and pats the axe. I'm told that you have the gift of sight. I would ask that you use that gift in Wulfric's name.
Make a charisma expression roll, difficulty 8. Actually, scratch that. I'm gonna do manipulation empathy.
Can I get my specialty on that? Persuasion.
Yes. Alright, so that's 4 successes. She shifts her jaw uncomfortably. It's a dangerous game to play with one's emotions.
Given the circumstances, it felt appropriate. I again would like to restate our condolences for any disturbance we've caused you, but the matter is of some gravity.
I may try my hand, but you may just be disappointed with the results. I'm no Octavia, after all. But at least I'm not mad, stuck in a child's body. And who asked you anyway?
It is enough that you tried for us.
Whatever aid you can provide will be most welcome. And whatever you tell us will be something we didn't know previously.
She nods. Look through my notes here. Sorry, I'm just looking for something. Alright, so after nodding, she takes a few steps forward and she approaches the axe. Hitchcock is watching her very carefully now. Do Do you try and give it to her, or just kind of move out of the way?
Thomas, not unfamiliar with her quirks, just simply going to give her her space.
She moves past you, and she reaches for the axe, and she hesitates for a moment before she places her hand on the burnt and somewhat broken, notched blade. And when she places her hand on it, a tremor passes through her, and she almost convulses. Burning. I feel it. An argument, and then surprise, violence, and then fear, and pain, and burning. And she holds at her side. God, burns. So much fear. And she releases her grasp on the axe. I felt his moments, gripping it. And she turns to you. You can see there are tears of blood in the corner of her eyes. I saw pictures, fragments of memory.
Can you describe who you saw?
A room, not like this one, but unlike it. Wulfric. Gaetan de Corriveau. Wilfrith. I saw them all. And her eyes are kind of going off with this 1,000-yard stare.
And who else? We know that there were at least 2 others.
She focuses. Siegfried. Siegfried. And as she's closing her eyes, the tears of blood start to come down. His face is burning. And another? Unfamiliar. And her eyes are still closed. I saw someone hideous. I attacked them, and she pantomimes a motion with a great axe. But they weren't there anymore. They caught flame and disappeared. And then and she reaches up to herself. Inferno. I don't know who I was. I don't know who I saw. They weren't supposed to be there. I'd never seen them before. A prior. And she opens her eyes. It was a prior. He caught flame. I struck him and he caught flame. And she's looking at you now, Thomas.
Thomas looks at once relieved and apologetic. You have done us a great service.
Her face is screwed up, curled up into that smile made before bursting into tears. And she crumples to the floor, holding at herself. I could still feel the flames. I could still hear their cries.
Thomas is going to loosen his jacket, throw it over her shoulders, since he's pretty sure touching her would make everything worse.
If she's trembling beneath your jacket, what is Robert doing?
Roberts wants to reach out and comfort her, but he's not entirely sure if how she'll react to that. And thus he stands back, watching this scene.
Cash is watching her impassively, but when he looks up to the two of you, he grimaces. Hitchcock speaks, looking down at Simone. Seems the Covenant got what it wanted. Agents that will do its bidding, regardless of the cost.
Thomas is focused on Simone right now. He's going to ignore that. It's all right. It's over now. You can let the vision go.
I can't. And she's rocking back and forth, moved over onto her side. I can't see anything else.
He offers a hand out to her, pressing his hand into hers if she'll let him.
She cowers away from you, winces in pain, and hides her face under her hair. You may stay. I will not condemn you to death, but do not ever ask me of this request or any other again. You are not welcome in my domain after this night.
See that we do not have official reason to be in your domain, and we will see that we are not.
And he'll look up to glare at you at that. Careful, boy.
Robert just frowns at this. So be it.
All right. Simone eventually calms down, collapsing into sleep. Perhaps from exhaustion or perhaps from the proximity of the day coming. But you all pass into sleep as the day comes. Meanwhile, what do Cormac and Ellen need me to do with perhaps an hour left of the night. Well, you can tell me how early you would have left.
You make sure Amelia didn't run off again.
She did not. She seems to be studying with Kazim when you enter the study you were in previously.
Alright, I will leave her to that then.
And Cormac?
Cormac will return to his book of philosophy. He was quite interested in it before they decided to go on this fool's errand. Until it's time to sleep.
Alright. Simple enough. You two as well are pressed into sleep. And Amelia, of course. And the day comes, and unbeknownst to you all, it passes. And you each awake the following evening. Mark off a blood point. We'll start with Cormac and Elenid. As you rise for the evening and set about getting yourselves together again, what do you mean to do?
Do we see?
Honestly,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
honestly, her first thought would be to ready herself for the night and attempt to meet up with the others in their coterie. Unbeknownst that they have been forbidden to enter the domain.
That was Cormac's idea as well. I was just going to ask if we could find each other after we awaken.
Yeah, it's easy enough for you to find each other, we'll say, in the foyer while Elenid is getting ready to leave. You find her, Cormac.
Well, we shouldn't keep our companions waiting.
No, I'm anxious to see what they've discovered. If anything.
If anything.
I'm ready to go when you are.
I was already in the process of readying myself to leave. And with that, she opens the door and heads out.
And Cormac follows.
All right. The two of you leave in the direction of Hitchcock's domain. Meanwhile, back at Hitchcock's domain, everyone has risen again. Simone is still under Thomas's jacket, now bloodied a bit by her tears. Cash is sitting pushed up against the far corner, still in his full plate mail, and Hitchcock is just awakening, sitting in his chair. We'll start with Robert. As you awaken, what do you do?
Robert will walk up to Simone and offer a hand to help her up if she will indeed take it.
When she pulls off the jacket and sees that you're leaning down to give her a hand, she bats it away. Do not touch me. And Thomas, you're waking around this time as well.
I do not fully understand the repercussions that what you have done for us will have on you in the long term, but if it offers some small consolation, you are welcome to use my manor anytime you need shelter from the day.
Her hands are up to her face, cleaning off the dried blood, rubbing very, very harshly, and making creases in her skin even to get all of it off. She seems to look at you while you're speaking, but says nothing as she walks past you out the door and descending the stairs quickly.
In that case, Tom is going to go ahead and collect. Did she leave his coat, or did she leave with it?
She left it on the ground.
Okay, then he'll collect that, and then rewrap the axe, and then depart.
And Robert?
Robert will glance at Hitchcock, but quickly leave as well.
You catch the glare of his eyes, watching you from his seat. And the two of you will begin making your way out. Thomas, even though you weren't far behind, by the time you make it out into the early evening street, there's no trace of Simone that you can tell. And the two of you exit the building. And for now are alone. What will Robert do?
Robert will... If he notices that Simone just completely disappeared, he'll turn on his auspex, just look around, see if he can spot her.
Sure, do a perception alertness. Difficulty 6. You do not see her. Even with your heightened senses as they are.
Then he'll simply comment on how unpleasant this whole business was and begin heading back towards the manor of Thomas.
You do see the streets are fairly busy again. At this hour, there are quite a good number of carriages and individuals going up and down the streets at a casual pace. A few look at you and then keep moving on, unaware of the problems of the undead.
Thomas is going to walk abreast with Robert, not saying much about the ordeal they just inflicted on Simone.
Let me look at your character sheets. You guys didn't really, I don't think either of you knew what you were subjecting her to, so I won't make you roll on this. But after the fact, having seen what you've done, the impact, I would say that both of you do feel a ring of some guilt there. Not enough to question your morality, but certainly enough to give you pause. You've not seen anybody react like that to anything. In time, as you're making your way back to the manor, and Elenid and Cormac are making their way out towards you, you inevitably come across each other in one of the larger cross streets, and different pairs this time identify each other. And you are close enough to speak, assuming someone does not run off in a different direction.
So, how did things go? I certainly hope she didn't... Well, I certainly hope she arrived before the cutoff time.
She's as well as she can be, all things considered. Though she won't be doing any more favors for us, I don't think.
As one can expect for being dragged out.
Actually, I think she might have forgiven us that.
It was more the vision she saw.
Oh. Well, this is hardly the place to discuss it. We should likely discuss it when we get back to the manor.
Yes, I need a wash and a fresh set of clothes. I've managed to get sanctimony all over these.
Hitchcock can be difficult to deal with. He hasn't let go of his love of the Lord.
He means well, and perhaps there was wisdom in his unease about going through that.
Perhaps we should have preyed on it. The sarcasm is thick in his voice, in case you missed it.
It seems that you have no relation with the divine at all.
No, but the hunters who slew my father did.
Ah.
Elened will begin heading back towards the manor.
Robert will follow as well.
What's Cormac doing?
Cormac is thoughtful on Long Tom's words, but he follows them back as well, quietly.
Yeah, Cormac and Ellen, that you would notice along the walk back, there are a few... Yeah, you would not miss this. There are a few drops of... Actually, more than a few drops of stained blood on Thomas's jacket.
She'll make note of that, but she will not bring it up until they get back to the manor.
Same here, it's not appropriate for public.
Soon enough, the group of you make your way back to Thomas's manor to regroup. Back in the study, you have some privacy. And actually, as you're entering, Kazim comes up to you, Thomas. My lord, Lady Amelia is asking if she may leave to feed.
Is Amelia anywhere around?
No.
Remind her that she merely need let us know where she intends to go to feed, not for permission to do so.
Of course, sir. And he bows and turns to leave for another part of the manor.
Devere can retell the vision as Simone related to us. Apparently I need some fresh clothes. And he'll meander off upstairs as well to go change.
All right, Devere. Tell us what happened. Why is his jacket stained with blood?
Because of the trauma, the vision, I can only imagine how horrifying it was to be in the burning building, hearing the screams.
She felt like she was there.
Yes.
Did she see anything of note?
She mentioned a prior.
Does this prior have a description?
Robert will relate as much as remember about the events. I don't believe enough description was given to know who this prior was, only that it was a prior.
Yeah, all she described to you was that it was almost as though she was living those moments, and she tried, or she assumes perhaps you think Wulfric tried to strike down what was clearly a prior, someone of hideous appearance, humanoid perhaps, but difficult to make out amidst the fires that were erupting around them. And it sounds like by her description Wulfric connected, and perhaps this prior was sent into the burning walls and disappeared after that point. That's really all you got.
I am sorry we had to put the girl through that, but it was for a good purpose. Although I'm quite sure that the Primogen of London won't like to see us again for some while.
No. At the very least, me and Thomas have been banished from his domain.
You don't say. Well, that's fantastic news.
The real question is if it extends to the rest of us as well.
Let us just assume that it does. We have no business in Hitchcock's domain anyway. Besides,
Hopefully.
we're moving on to Lincoln soon, aren't we? We'll give him some time to cool off.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Alright. And as you finish describing and discussing this sight, this vision, beginning your plans for Lincoln, the scene slowly closes to a fade to black. And we will end here tonight, and we will pick this back up next week.
Neat.
Good game. You picked stuff out I didn't think you would. As evidenced by my frantic digging for notes.
Love it. Welcome to my hell. I mean,
And now we have a pissed off Primogen and a tormented Malkav.
Yeah, you guys
I
are
mean-
making friends everywhere.
She was tormented
Fair.
before, so
yeah, that's what I was going to say. She's more tormented now, if anything.
No, that was creative. I didn't expect you guys go in that direction, but that was definitely a more interesting end to that than I thought that would be.
I mean, the more obvious option would have been to sell out the Cappadocian to the Giovanni and have the Giovanni do it, but then you're giving the Giovanni information.
True.
of course we could lie to the Giovanni.
That's assuming he gave you the same information.
Fair enough.
Who can trust a Malkavian anyway?
I resent that.
Alright.
Malkavians know quite a bit.
Well, for getting that far, kind of getting to the end of your, or perhaps the end of the Axe quest, we'll give 2 experience tonight, and let's do entertaining role players. Start with Thomas.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Cormac again. Without his poking about the different parts of London, we wouldn't have stumbled upon a resolution to that particular question.
Cool. One to Cormac. Cormac, what about you?
Ooh. This is a tough one tonight. I think I'm going to give it to Long Tom tonight for the obvious emotion he displayed by what he'd done to Simone.
Cool. Like that. Elenid?
I am likely going to give it to Cormac as well.
Awesome. And Robert?
Cormac gets my vote.
Alright, that's 3. That's a full experience and a third to Thomas. Good game all. Very entertaining. I'm always enjoying the strange directions you take with solving these problems. I'm actually surprised how long you guys have stuck together, which is kind of a nice add-on. So you get a lot of scenes together. I imagine that's not going to be the case for very long once you guys go abroad. But it's been cool. Very cool to see. So, yeah, 2 XP all around. And we'll pick it up next week. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Good game.
Word.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.